I'm sorry, what? I'm not ready to talk about it yet.
Can't take that back. What happened, for God's sake?
You know, this gay thing and that gay thing.
What do you mean? I don't understand.
He was saying that you was gay.
Come on, man. I'm a straight gangster, man. That man in my hood, he know what's happening.
It starts with a quiet truth finally touching the mic. Toni Braxton looks at the camera, and the internet hears a silence that says more than noise. People have whispered for years. And now Toni Braxton gives a shape to those whispers with careful words and a steady breath. This is the part where love, image, and fear meet backstage. This is the part where Toni Braxton remembers the man who stood in the wings. And the city remembers the night the comments would not stop. When Toni Braxton speaks, she does not chase drama. She holds the timeline in her hands and tells it in simple lines. She says what she can say and protects what must stay soft. She does not drag. She does not show off. She keeps the story clean, but the story is heavy. It is Toni Braxton the artist, Toni Braxton the woman, and Toni Braxton the sister who learned to breathe again after loss. It also is Birdman, the man many call Birdman, the businessman Brian Baby Williams, the person who showed up to shows, asked "Are you okay?" and stood close when crowds felt far. The world saw Toni Braxton and Birdman take a private friendship and turn it into something public. And the world did what it does, it asked for more. The world wanted a date, a ring, a headline. The world wanted to know if Toni Braxton and Birdman were forever or just for the season. What the world did not see was a softer truth. How Toni Braxton looked at her calendar, looked at her health, and looked at the ground under her feet before she took another step. What the world did not see was how rumors grow teeth. Some people said Birdman and Lil Wayne kissed. Some people said it was brotherhood. Some people said it was a sign of something the industry would argue about for years. In one city, a radio mic kept the tape rolling while Birdman said he gives love like a father gives love to a son. In another city, old footage made new noise, and the internet ran with it. Through all of it, Toni Braxton had to listen to people talk about Toni Braxton like she was not in the room. Through all of it, Toni Braxton kept the center of her story close. Her music, her sons, her body, her breath. When Toni Braxton and Birdman stood in the light and called it love, people cheered. When Toni Braxton and Birdman said engaged, people cried. When Toni Braxton and Birdman stepped back from the date, people shouted. There was a ring with a number so big it did not feel real. There was a lost case on a flight. There was an Instagram post that said it's over. There was a red dress with a caption about a new chapter. And there was a picture months or years later that said maybe not over at all. The truth is that Toni Braxton is a woman who has learned to move carefully. The truth is that Toni Braxton has carried both stage light and hospital light. The truth is that Toni Braxton cannot afford to play with her breath, her heart, her time. If you ask whether Toni Braxton saw signs and ran, the honest answer is that only Toni Braxton can tell you what the signs meant in the quiet. What we do know is that Toni Braxton has always chosen calm, even when the crowd begs for a storm. We do know that Toni Braxton heard the word wife and measured it against the word well. We do know that Toni Braxton listened to doctors, remembered Tracy Braxton, and counted the days that felt heavy. The discourse around Birdman never sits still. Some say Birdman is simply Birdman, a man loyal to his people, a man who showed affection in a crew where affection looked different. Some say Birdman lived close to a rumor line and let people paint him with it. What matters to this story is not the echo. What matters is what Toni Braxton could live with. In the end, the timeline is simple. Toni Braxton and Birdman worked together, stood together, got engaged, pressed pause, posted, deleted, and left everyone guessing. In the middle of that timeline is a woman who had to protect her health, while strangers argued about her home. In the middle is Toni Braxton, whose name should be said with care. So we say it again, Toni Braxton knows how to stand in noise and still not let the noise inside. And we say Birdman again, because Birdman is part of that noise and part of that care. And we say Lil Wayne and Turk and Young Buck and Juvenile because the internet will bring them up. We'll call old quotes new proof, and we'll never admit when a clip is just a clip. This is not a chord. This is a confession of limits. Toni Braxton can only live the life she can breathe through. Toni Braxton can only marry the life that won't break her body. Toni Braxton can only give the public so much. She has already given songs, nights and years. She has already carried the cost of fame and the price of being a headline. If she holds the rest back, that is not mystery, that is mercy. If she keeps Birdman in her life or keeps Birdman at a distance, that is not a twist, that is a boundary. And if a picture shows Toni Braxton and Birdman close again, remember that distance is not always measured in inches. Sometimes it is measured in peace. Sometimes it is measured in how easy it is to breathe when the phone is face down and the room is quiet. In that quiet, Toni Braxton hears her own name the way it was meant to be heard. In that quiet, Toni Braxton is not a rumor. Toni Braxton is a person. There is another chapter that people forget when they only chase romance. Toni Braxton has fought for every single comeback. Toni Braxton stood on a stage in Vegas and then learned what it feels like when your chest tells you to sit down. Toni Braxton heard words like microvascular angina, stent, and bypass long before the comment section knew how to spell them. Toni Braxton met lupus like an enemy and then learned to live with it like a strict neighbor. Toni Braxton changed her plate, changed her pace, and changed her mind about what success looks like. There was a time when Toni Braxton sat across from Oprah Winfrey and felt a kind of cold she did not expect, a kind of public doubt that stings even when you smile. People called it an interview. Toni Braxton remembers it like a lesson in standing tall while sitting down. She walked away with the understanding that the world will count your dresses, count your plates, and still not count your pain. Toni Braxton learned to pay what she owed, to rebuild what was broken, and to refuse shame even when it came wrapped in a headline. She filed for bankruptcy twice, and then built again, because that is what Toni Braxton does. She builds again. She went from arena lights to family lights, from red carpets to red line heart scans, from a tour schedule to a careful calendar. Through it all, Toni Braxton kept giving the audience a voice that still sounds like warm night air after rain. When people said Toni Braxton should pose a certain way to fix the money, Toni Braxton said no in a way that said yes to her sons. When people said the show must go on, Toni Braxton said the body must go on first. And when grief came to the door in the shape of Tracy Braxton's illness, Toni Braxton learned a new stillness. Tracy Braxton was a light, gentle and brave, and then the light moved to a place the camera cannot reach. Toni Braxton says she feels Tracy Braxton in the snow and in the moments when the doctors arrive just in time. She says she is still here because someone was looking out for her. You can believe that or not, but you cannot deny what Toni Braxton has survived. Add it all, the near-miss heart attack, the stent, the warnings about tours, the days when anxiety walks the hallway before she does. Add the family dinners where Toni Braxton had to say something hard and watch the room try to hold it. Add the losses that stack quietly in a corner of the house where cameras are not allowed. Toni Braxton keeps walking. She keeps showing up to the mic even when she is not sure how long she can stand. She keeps telling the story of Toni Braxton with a tone that is humble. Without being small, when the internet asks for noise, Toni Braxton gives music. When the internet asks for a villain, Toni Braxton gives a boundary. When the internet asks for proof, Toni Braxton gives the only proof that matters. Another year with her sons. Another checkup that says okay for now. Another song that proves you can be soft and still be steel. People will keep asking about Birdman. That is how the internet works. People will keep replaying a clip with Lil Wayne. That is how memory works online. People will keep debating Oprah Winfrey and that day on that couch. That is how critique works when it forgets to be kind. But the person at the center is not a debate. The person at the center is Toni Braxton. Say it again for the algorithm and for respect. Toni Braxton the artist, Toni Braxton the mother, Toni Braxton the sister, Toni Braxton the survivor. In simple words, this is the truth. Toni Braxton does not owe anyone a wedding date, a ring, or a comment about a rumor. Toni Braxton owes her body rest, her son's presence, and her heart as few surprises as possible. If tomorrow brings a picture with Birdman, wish them peace. If tomorrow brings a tour that is shorter than the last, wish her strength. If tomorrow brings a quiet season, leave Toni Braxton that quiet. You can love the music and still love the person who sings it. You can repeat the name Toni Braxton as many times as you want for the views. But remember to say it with gentleness. Repeat Toni Braxton because the story is hers and the breath is hers and the future, God willing, is hers. Repeat Toni Braxton because in a world that turns everything into a take, she chose to remain a human being. Repeat Toni Braxton because names said with care can be a kind of prayer. And if you must end with a headline, let it be simple. Toni Braxton stays. Toni Braxton heals. Toni Braxton chooses life and chooses life.